Here we are today, episode 7 on the Built for This podcast. Built for This podcast is, man, when you're built for this, been through the hustle, been through the grind, still standing, it means something, and that's Built for This. And my guest today is a great friend of mine, a business partner of mine. His name's Tim McCormick. But before I introduce you to Tim, man, hit the subscribe button for us so we can start sharing this. If you see this, share it. If you like it, throw a comment. Let's get some dialogue, Q&A. Through this, there's a lot of education, there's a lot of dialogue, and we also need to learn ourselves. So drop comments, tell us what you're thinking on the subject. So here we are. Tim, welcome to the podcast, my man.
How you doing, Pat?
I'm doing good. What a great. Tim and I, we do this, we do meetings, Zoom meetings, everything all the time. Cause of course we're building businesses, and Tim's been with me, I think, since 2014, I believe. It's been a minute. He came,
it's been a good decade, man.
It has. So, I mean, even a decade ago when we were running this organic movement and, warrior for Mother Nature kind of mentality and reversing the damage caused by, all this stuff we're going to talk about today, right? It's been a long time. And you and I have been in the same team, and, the yin to the yang, in the forefront with my voice out front, you backing up some of my stuff in the back end. You're like, this is the guy I call into and say, hey, like him, talking shit with a soil king. Did I put my foot in my mouth? He's like, no, keep going. These are the reasons. This is the data. Let's go. We got a movement. We got things. We got to change the world one plant at a time with the responsible farming practices. And
the good word needs to be spoken. You do a good job at that. So I'm happy to be here, man.
I'm happy to have you. And I want to always start out everything is there's no segregation in agriculture. As we're talking about agriculture, we're talking about all medicinal plant botanicals. We're talking about creating living soil and a healthy colonies of fungal and bacteria, and, bringing back Mother Nature, because we seem to kick her off the top of the mountain.
Yeah. Yep, I sure do, man. It's been a long road ahead for agriculture and growing food, and ingraining other crops within, like cannabis, within agriculture itself. So I mean, hey, good words got to be preached somehow. So we just got to keep on doing it.
Yeah, man. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes nobody listens. Sometimes I don't listen. So there's a couple things Tim and I can talk for hours and hours and hours. We're going to try to keep this to an hour. Things I really want to hit home today, Tim, is I want to really talk about health and wellness. Organics, or the word organics is so frayed now and frail, but versus synthetics. We want to talk a little bit about that. Then we really want to go into big agro tech side of the biohazard side of the industry as well, where farmlands, like, what are we doing with it? How pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals, GMOs, like let's start digging in deep on some of that, and then we'll go to pest pressure and products that really help, that are mindful and conscious of the environment, right? Because we're environmental warriors, really, at the end of the day. Absolutely. So let's talk about let's get the synthetic. Let's talk about synthetic cultivation versus organic cultivation, sure. And where it comes from. Like what are the principles behind synthetic that makes synthetic, and why is there such a barrier for the synthetic side to come over to organic side? Seems like a constant fight. Doesn't have to be.
It is. And, my background is, before I got into cannabis cultivation, my background is in conventional agriculture. So I got out of college and I got thrown straight to the wolves in Florida ag. So I worked with the University of Florida Integrated Food and Agricultural Sciences program. I worked in Plant City with, berries and citrus and potatoes, and, every crop that Florida could grow, I was thrown into that when I was the ripe age of 22. And it's interesting to hear, where the two different perspectives lies, because when you're at the market buying your produce, you don't realize that you see organic and you see just normal, and you don't realize the distinction between the two. And so I think it's really important as we become more conscious and we become more, careful about our health, that we really understand the differences between the two, because organic really doesn't mean much outside the marketing term these days, but you have like this conventional thing. So I guess let's back up to the history of agriculture and kind of where we started from.
Yeah.
Prior to the Industrial Revolution, we were, tilling with ox and having like manual push plows into the ground. We're planting heirloom seeds. We're using manures. We're spreading any type of organic substances around. It's very laborious, and the yields you get from your products aren't the best products because they're just not productive enough. And so when industrial agriculture came around, the steam engine, then we had World War II, and we had all these leftover munitions, ammonium nitrate, potassium nitrate.
Yep.
They got rebranded in the 50s because what else are we going to do with it? We're done with war. We're not blowing things up anymore, so we need something else to do with it. So they coined it the Green Revolution. And it's this funny term that they use because it's, ammonium nitrate and urea and all these things are very toxic substances when used in large quantities. I mean, small quantities, they go boom and they go boom bigger, So they repurpose these chemicals to be used as farm food, essentially. You feed plants this because it makes plants grow really fast and they're green. And so since the 50s, we've been on this industrial kick of using this biotech synthetic chemistry to grow all of our crops. And when that came around back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, it pushed all the organics out to the side. We don't need to use manures anymore because we can put nitrates on it. We have phosphorus in salt form. We don't need to put the organic forms down. And so now we're 50 years, 70 years into this industrial agricultural journey. And it's kind of like, the methods we have to grow food now are so far from organic. It's not even funny. I mean, so, conventional, what is conventional? What is organics, right? Conventional,
that's a question.
Right. And so the conventional is using harsh chemical fertilizers, ammonium nitrate, diammonium phosphate, these chemicals, potassium nitrate, ammonium nitrate, which are super harsh on the environment. When you put nitrates down, you put nitrogenous salts down on the earth starts to you start to alter it, and the good microbes don't want to live there anymore. The predators don't want to live there. The pollinators don't want to live there anymore. And it kind of alters the subsurface and the soil substrate itself. So none of the good guys live there anymore. So when you're putting that, now you get bug pressure, right? So because we don't have any of the predators or the defense mechanisms that nature has developed for millions of years, we now have to use these really toxic synthetic pesticides. And that's
invasive. We got invasive weed pressures too. Like, it's crazy.
And I think a lot of people don't know what these pesticides are either. Herbicides are pesticides. The things that kill the fungi, the things that kill the bugs, the things that kill the weeds are all pesticides. Yeah. And when you're killing living things, you have to use really, really harsh chemicals. And so we have this evolution in the 90s where genetic modification occurred. And in 1994, we allowed the genetically modified corn to appear. We call them terminator seeds, where every year, like normally in organic agriculture, if you take your seed from your crop, you can plant it the next year and it grows into another crop. With these terminator seeds, these genetically modified technology, these seeds don't germinate again, so you have to buy them from the biotech company the second year. So then they made the new advancement called Roundup Ready seeds. And I'm only painting this picture because it leads into why we are in the situation that we are in our agricultural experience as a society, right? So when we invented Roundup Ready technology, essentially what this means is we genetically modified the corn and the soy to withstand Roundup Ready herbicides. So when you have all these weeds around, because weeds are one of the biggest impacts of your yield. If you have yields, if you have weeds go crazy, your yield gets cut in half, and farmers can't lose their yield. They are reliant on their bushels per acre. So they developed this technology where you can plant the seed in the ground and you can spray Roundup everywhere, glyphosate, and it won't kill the crop, but it kills all the other weeds around it. So then what we end up consuming at the end of the crop, once the farmer picks it and puts it into like processing into corn syrup or processing into soybean oil, it's essentially concentrating all these pesticides, all these herbicides into one final product that now we eat.
So you hear that, and you get that. I'm just, for the viewers out there, taking one volume and concentrating it down into a deadly concoction. Like if you think about concentrating it down, it's exactly what he's talking about.
Yep, exactly. And so now we're all eating poisons.
Yep.
There are no limitations on what the farmers get to apply via pesticides. I mean, we're still spraying paraquat, which has been known to cause cancer. I mean, Agent Orange was 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T. If you take out the 2,4,5-T, you just have 2,4-D, and that's an herbicide now. You see how we manipulate munitions and all these different wartime chemicals into now chemicals that we're using to grow food with. And we're wondering why people have allergies going through the roof. We wonder why people have all these diseases, tumors, cancers. Farmers are 7 times more likely to get cancer than any other person in the United States. Why?
7 times. That's a
7 times more likely.
Farmers.
Yeah, Hodgkin's lymphoma, I believe, is the biggest one that attacks the farmers. Yeah. And it's really bad, especially when you get down to like not only the health of the humans, but when we make like a ton of urea, we have to use natural gas for that. So that means we have to frack the earth in order to get the fertilizer to feed the plant. And I know this is hard to conceptualize, but it's 33,500 cubic feet of natural gas is required to make 1 ton of urea. And 1 ton of urea covers 4 acres of land. So, I mean, you can understand the expansiveness and what this takes, how much we have to frack out of the earth just to get fertilizers to put on the field to grow the crops. And then once we put this urea down, we're lucky to get a 60% uptake of nitrogen into the plant. That means over 60% evaporating into the atmosphere. So, I mean, out of the 2,000 pounds we put down of urea, I mean, you're only looking at about 25% getting uptaken into the plant, and the rest goes into the atmosphere.
And then it's white labeled, into smaller bottles and taken into the other side of the industry under Athena and everybody else. Same thing.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so I only paint that picture because that's where conventional agriculture is.
Right.
We don't care about the chemicals we spray on them. But remember, cannabis has a restricted use list where you can only use certain pesticides on cannabis production. But the food we eat, you can spray everything under the sun if you wanted to, and there's no restriction. And the idea is that, we cook it, and once we cook it down, it goes away, which is a logical fallacy. I think it's a feel-good statement because some of these chemicals like mycobutanol, we use on grapes, we use on bell peppers, and when you heat it past 450 degrees, it turns to hydrogen cyanide.
Facts. Man.
So it's like, okay, cool. We can't use it on cannabis, but we can cook it into pies. It's used on apples too. We can cook it into grapes. We can cook it into bell peppers. No problem. So there's a disconnect here between the chemicals we think we have to use that we've been taught over 50, 60 years and what's actually healthy for us and what's actually okay for us to consume. And so here's where we're at with organics, though. In order to be considered organic, you have to go 3 years of testing on your land, which means you can't use any conventional chemicals. If you find it, you got to start back over again. If you get your certification, you get it taken away from you. So we have a restricted list. And find so much that you can lose your farm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so, with this organic certification, it restricts the products that you can use to about 10% of the total products allowed. Right? And from a farming stance, it's like, if I'm only allowed to use manures and these guys are allowed to use really high concentrated chemicals, of course my organics isn't going to yield as much. In fact, it's known in the conventional agriculture industry and even in the organic agriculture industry that, organic crops yield half of what conventional does. And so this is what dissuades everybody from growing organic is because one, you're scrutinized. You're under 3 years of testing. Then every year you're under annual testing, which is expensive. It's laborious. If you have any drift from your neighbor that comes over, you can pop for it. So it makes farmers really apprehensive to growing organically. And this is why you don't see organic corn on the market. This is why you don't see organic edamame. This is why you really have a hard time seeing even organic wheat, is because we have the government restricting what the organic farmers can do. And don't get me wrong, some of that restriction is good. Some of it needs to happen, but a lot of this is kind of necessary and kind of just adulterates the market, if you will. So this is why you see we have these differences between organic and conventional, and why we have a lot of organic produce on the market. There's a lot more conventional than there are organic.
I mean, we have hours worth of discussion. We want to get into these CDFA and Omri certifications. You know, the stuff I've been working on and having to deal with and discovering, and the way that it's a pay to play. I mean, CDFA at one point was a direction that I thought was really well put. And even, you know, it's even hard for farmers to even sit on a podcast right now and talk about CDFA. I have CDFA under my bags of soil. You know, I can tell you right now, I'm taking it off, and there's reasons behind that. And if they hear this, then they're going to find me. This is really what it comes down to, right? So they make it almost impossible to play. And if you're a real farmer, the paperwork, the nonsense, and the fees they have to go through just to get their produce on a shelf or even into a farmer's market is ridiculous. When real nutrient dense farmers, our food producers, don't have access to the same shelf because they don't pay to play in the scenario, or actually they're not even allowed to, because now they're talking about fungal bacteria balances. These are things you can't talk about under these certifications because they're called claims. Well, when I talk to a farmer and I go source my food, I'm having these conversations. I want to know my farmer. It's important for me to understand that the concept of farming and the practices that farmer brings to the table. And man, when you have a conversation with a farmer and you start talking about biology, you start talking about nutrient dense food, you see the light shine in the eyes of these farmers, right? And the frustrating part on top of that is as they smile, I know that that's a person I want to go into deeper conversation with and purchase my food from. But on the flip side, I see the hurt in the back end of it because he's been blocked out of the chain of command to actually even have a farm that's producing and making money. It's crazy. And then and I'm going into it, and then the others, you look, I mean, this is another hard topic, and all these things it's like onion unraveling, right? You said how, it takes 3 years and you have to go through this. But the other thing is, now that we've put so many conditions, if you have to have each, you have to have everybody. You got to have, in a farm. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I know what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to know how to say it. So you have to have, we have to have blacks. We have to have Mexicans. We have to have whites. We have to have, all these different things. But really in farming, you look at it, it's about the work. It's not about the race. That's crazy. And so these certification programs are mandating you have to have all this to be certified and on the shelf. When reality, go walk the farms and see who's really farming. See the conscious farmers. We're not talking race on a conscious farm. We're not. We're talking about delivering a proper nutrient dense food. Nobody's talking about who's who. Those topics are just like, don't belong in farming. I mean, we got black farmers across the country that are awesome, right? We've had go back in history of what it is, right? You go out to farms now, it's like, anyways, that's a deeper conversation. That's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, most of our food's grown by Hispanics. Like they're the hardest workers out there. Like you're not going to find me go picking hot peppers in the field, let alone acres of it.
On my farms, if I had white guys out there doing it, to be honest with it, we wouldn't be. It would be a lot harder, and it would take a lot longer, and we wouldn't get as much done. Nowhere near. Period.
I think that goes to state, like I'm working in industrial ag right now, growing 35,000 acres, right, of industrial crop. And finding labor on these farms is increasingly difficult.
Correct.
I mean, no one wants to work anymore. It's really weird. We went from this time where, it's back in the 40s and 50s where we have to feed ourselves. We have to feed the warriors across the seas that were fighting for our country, like hemp for victory type stuff, victory gardens, right? Yep. And it's like at one point it was like, if not but one of the top 5 things to do as a society back in the wartime era was to grow your own food, food for your community, and now we can't find people to grow food worth a damn at this point. And it's hard because food is the lifeblood of our nation. It's the most important topic next to food, shelter, and energy.
And this is what Tim and I talk on, and our other partner is Alan Atkinson, who's my great friend, right? He's our other partner, and we got some really great products, some really great R&D research already done. Data's already been collected, and we just been hush on what we're really doing, but it's really going to be next level. I'm super excited, but this is the conversations we sit and we have for hours and hours and hours. And I love it.
Yep.
And I love it.
And a couple more things, man. You know, with organic, because of the restriction on what we can use to feed the plant, most of the organic produce is malnourished. It's not actually nutrient dense. And I don't think that's promoted enough as nutrient density within the crop itself, because this food will heal you. And it's crazy to think in the Western world with all this Western medicine that food actually heals you. And food's the number one source of healing. The antioxidants from berries, the flavonols, the terpenoids from these plants. I mean, just the therapeutic alkaloids that plants produce that heal people. And it's all in the food. And the more nutrient dense the food is, the healthier it makes a society. Especially, you know, we're right after we're 5 years past this COVID era or whatever the crap this was. And, you know, health is the most important thing that we should do right now, because you being healthy keeps everyone else healthy too. You know, it keeps your bills lower, keeps you out of the hospital. If you don't take care of yourself right now, I mean, the illness will catch up to you. So if you don't have time for it, the illness will make you have time. So it's important that we eat clean produce, because that's a gateway to healthy individuals.
And we understand what processed food is. You know, we don't, as a society, we're really not educated on really what the damage caused from processed food. What's the process? What creates a shelf life? Not only, I mean, I always, in my mind, I'm a visionary. I picture everything, and my soils, my healthy living soils, right? My microbiome is the same diverse colonies of bacteria and fungal as my soil. I mean, I can even go one step farther, and you and everybody else has seen me eat King Kashi compost, but I actually feed my microbiome. But in visualizing it with processed food versus not, you know, you eat a piece of broccoli, right? That broccoli goes down in your digestive system, right? It goes through your stomach. That bacteria is now eating that. It's eating it just like you did. It's loving on it. It's easy to produce it. It's easy to go through it. It's easy to turn it into available. It's easy to separate the waste that goes out of you and then the food source to go in you, right? But when it's processed food, it's just that. It's a clump of crap. Now all of a sudden you have your biology, all your biology in your stomach is like, all of a sudden, what is it going to do with that? Now you got all these happy microbes eating the broccoli, eating this nutrient dense food and getting fill off it, and they're making your body, they're offing it and making medicinal for your whole body. And then all of a sudden you have this clump of crap that comes down there that's been processed, and they're hungry. They got to eat it. They're eating it. Now you're making them sick, and they're working at 10% the rate. I mean, it's crazy how, you know, what you feed in, you feed out. Right? Health is wealth. Like, health is what you do. And so picturing it and understanding it and really understand, you know, your body is going to McDonald's. What is that going to do for the biology in your gut other than kill it? It's not going to get any food out of it. You're going to wash it out. So now all of a sudden, your microbiome, your healthy microbiome, is not a healthy microbiome anymore. What you feed it depends on the length of history of where you're going to live, how you're going to live, the length of your life, the health of your life.
If you eat produce that's covered with fungicides and bactericides and herbicides, I mean, what's that going to do to your gut? I mean, 90% of the DNA in our body is from the microbes in our stomach. And inside our stomach, a foreign DNA is 90% of the DNA in our body. So if we start killing off all these microorganisms that are responsible to keeping us healthy and alive, I mean, I saw this microbiologist who was studying stool samples from people who took the vaccine, right? And she found that within 90 days after taking a vaccine, all of your bifidobacteria just went nuclear. None of it was around anymore within 90 days of taking the vaccine. And she actually found that when you start increasing the levels of bifidobacteria on people that has taken the vaccine, they find that a lot of the symptoms and a lot of the issues disappear. And I think that's a testament to kind of what our microbes, what our microbial system does for our human body. And I think a lot of people, we have this weird mycophobia and bacteriophobia in society, but we are microbes, we are bacteria, we are fungi. And it's so strange to think that we have this disconnection and we're scared of it when we are it. If we don't have the bacteria in our stomach, we don't digest our food. we don't process any of the nutrients. The methylation process, the process when we eat whole food and it breaks down into substances that are available to our body, it's called methylation. Bacteria in our stomach, bifido and lactobacillus, are responsible for that methylation process along with all the organic acids in our stomach. So, this people not caring, or I should say the people growing our food not caring what they're spraying on our food, and us eating it without knowing that it's poison is dangerous. And we have to recognize that we as a society need to go back to our roots and take control of our food supply. Yeah. We need to start petitioning. We need to start arguing. We need to start showing up and talking to the farmers that grow our food and ask them, please use better products. And they're out there. Pat, you and I know both. We've been doing this for how long? You know the people I work with. You know the people. You know who we're tied into. There are solutions out there for agriculture, and it's just we need to adopt a new methodology. Things need to change. This isn't the 70s anymore. This isn't the 90s anymore. The consumers are smart.
Our consumers are smart. They just need access to education. I mean, all of us do, right? And we talk about this. This is, podcasts like this, and we start getting this movement going. And so for some reason, society thinks that consumers are stupid. They're really not. They're just sold a bag of shit, right? Through marketing and money, really what it comes down to, big corporation style. And so like just the simple things of antibiotics. I mean, let's talk about antibiotics wipe out every living organism in your gut, everything, all the microbiome. Why would I want to kill it and wipe that out? I want to feed it with the reason why I have a stomach issue in the first place is because I got bad pathogens from not having a healthy microbiome and keeping it healthy. And then we go and we don't have a whole lot of time, but on the antibiotics, just think of the amount of antibiotics that even horses get or cattle get, or especially, let's just talk about horses. Now, all of a sudden, you have all these antibiotics that are given to horses. Now it goes in their guts. Now they're pooping it out in the piles of horse manure, right? Now, farmers think that horse manure is gold and great, but now all of a sudden, 90% of the antibiotic is now in the horse poop, and that horse poop is now put in the horse pile of poop. Now that horse pile of poop is a whole pile of antibiotics, right? Wiped out every colonies of bacteria. The same things we're trying to do to take the poop and add it to our gardens and make it more prosperous. It's like, if you don't know, you don't know. So talking about it is super important.
Right. Well, we only know what we hear. And that's the thing about information. Knowledge is power. So if you control the access of information that people have about their food, they're just going to go to the store and see, oh, that's a pretty bell pepper. I should buy that bell pepper. Or that looks like flawless meat. I mean, now we start getting into knowing what you eat, knowing what goes in your body first. And we have to be conscious consumers because the people growing the food, people processing our food are not looking out for us. So we need to really be conscious, and we need to really take our own time and take our own effort and energy to look into our food, because the people producing it are not looking out for our health, and we have to look out for our health. Health first.
Farmers, man, go seek out your local farmers market. Go even deeper than that. Your food farmers, out here in Arizona, I got my great friend Rhino Farms, Riba Farms, Mark. He's just go tour his farm. He'd love to have you out there. We got a half an hour pretty much left to talk. I've been reading up on the Senate Bill 747. You and I haven't really talked about this, but I've been looking into this buyback farm bill, and it's going to go right into the farmers bill, hemp bill. All of it's going to be adopted, and it's something to slide in. But there's a lot of pros to cons to this to really talk about. Buyback farm bill is it's all about contaminated with PFAs, and I know we want to get into PFA chemicals. Our whole country is riddled, absolutely riddled with contaminants. These PFAs are crazy, but reading a lot of the dialogue on it, I don't trust a lot of the not CDFA, but the CFA, right, rules that are out there. When you're reading on their website they say, I think the last thing I just read before I came into this podcast was over 70% is not found in food. And that really, I'm like, how is that? It's like you got a buyback program, you're buying farms and you're emitting contaminants. And now you're saying it's not harming the food it's like, there's such double-edged swords on this. And buyback farms is, is, they'll come in and they'll actually buy your farm from you, or buy the farm from you, or actually what they'll do is they'll own the farm and they'll put you to work and guarantee 2 to 3 years of wages. And I'm thinking, government buyback farms. These are the same people we're fucking supposed to trust that put the PFAs on the ground and these regulations that allow this stuff to go in. And now all of a sudden they want our intellectual property and ownership of this. Like, so there's this whole flip. This is a good thing I'm hearing out there, but really, is it a good thing? Like, in the comments, people, let's talk about this, because I'm not seeing it as such a great thing when a buyback of farm is government owned farm, or a buyback farm means, they're going to put some kind of condition and they're going to, pay for you to have employees and give you a salary for a certain amount of years. But what comes with that? Now all of a sudden you got their certificate. You have to use their certification. Now you're using products that the certification programs are demanding, and now your nutrient-dense food doesn't have nutrients in it, right? It's like, this is the kind of shit that gets us in the hole. So talk a little bit about PFAs, if you would.
Sure. Yeah. So background in case people don't know what PFAs are. So they're polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAs for short. And these polyfluoroalkyl substances are a carbon-fluorine bonded molecule, which essentially just means they're resistant to solvents, they're resistant to grease, they're resistant to oil, they're resistant to water, and they're resistant to heat. We call them forever molecules because they're not going anywhere. They exist for a long time in the earth, and you can imagine that if they could exist a long time in the earth, how long are they going to exist in our bodies? So our bodies have no way to filter them out of our vessel. It's funny that the FDA is now, like, the government is now buying back property when it was the FDA back in the 40s that allowed PFAs to even exist.
I'm just
right?
Man, it's simple logic right here. Like, think about what's happening. It's like the monopoly.
And so it's like, where do they come from, right? These things don't just rain down from the sky, from the stars. PFAs are your water-resistant, stain-resistant upholstery, your carpet. PFAs are in your clothes. PFA are in your cleaning products. So when you clean your toilet, you clean your bathtub, you clean your house, and you wash it down the drain, you're washing the PFAs down the drain. Certain PFAs have actually been authorized for cooking ware, food packaging, and food processing. So all these big food processors are...
They recalled that on food packaging last year, finally, because they had PFAs all on the packaging. On every time you open a package of food, there was PFAs in it. Like, I don't know what it. Yeah, it's crazy,
it's like
man.
It's like
Teflon.
It's what Teflon's. Yeah, it's what Teflon's made out of. And there's actually a study a handful of years ago, that Teflon actually bonds to your DNA. They were finding Teflon in the baby's DNA from the mother, and the baby never ate anything on a Teflon pan. So these PFAs are very troublesome molecules. There's hundreds of thousands of these PFA molecules, and they're very wide range. And we've been slowly allowing them into our society for, 80 years now. And so, now they're in the air, now they're in the water, now they're in the soil, now they're in the fish. And Pat, mind you, this isn't just a United States problem. We're finding PFAs in almost every single country in the blood of humans and the blood of animals. This is the global problem that we've allowed for the past 80 years. And now we're about to see some very, very severe consequences. And, there's some severe impacts that we're just now starting to find out. First off, we know in a short-term sense that they cause damage to the liver and they damage your immune system, which, again, we're 5 years past COVID. It probably need to not eat things or do things that impact our immunity system right now.
Correct.
Right? The second part about this is that it's known to cause low birth weight, birth defects, delayed development with humans, and newborn deaths in all the lab trials that we've seen with animals. And I think the worst impact of all this is we don't know the long-term impacts these substances are going to have on the health of humans or animals around us. We don't know how long they're going to last in the environment. I mean, plants take them up when they're in the ground. So if we're spreading manures or we're spreading things out that have the PFAs, the chemicals, the adjuvants, the emulsifiers, the surfactants, if we're spreading this stuff out, broadcasting it on our plants, and the plants are taking it up and now we're eating it, how do we get control of these substances in our human ecosystem? Right?
Yeah, that's it.
we're just now starting to see.
Yep.
Yeah. And we are just now starting to see the impacts. And I think it's only going to get worse from the more we look at it.
I mean, they don't want that data to get out there, so it's up to us to figure a lot of it out, and we are. But it's like the biosolids. If anybody picture biosolids on a big farms, right? Your sludge is really what it's being sprayed out with these PFAs all mixed in it. And other research that I've been doing on it is how it's not. They're finding it not bonding to the soil, but finding it in all the water systems, right? So all your aquifers, all your wells, these wells they're pumping out all of a sudden, and they're finding it. So now all of a sudden it's in your water. You're watering your crops. You're putting it all on top of. It's like foliar spraying your crops with more concentrated PFAs, right? So it's getting on top of the lettuce and everything else, but they're not finding it. It's interesting that we got to get to this far down the line before we say stop, slow the fuck down, and we really got to start digging into this. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, fluorine is a very mobile molecule. It will go with water wherever it wants. So that's why you find it locked into our aquifers and locked into our wells and locked into our waste treatment plant, because we don't know how to filter it out. We don't know how to break it down to release the fluorine and the carbon. That once they bond together, it's pretty much like super glue. And so so everybody's washing this down their drains into the wastewater, the municipality. And now the municipality is overloaded because they don't know what to do with this. So it's going back into your water. I won't drink my water here out of my tap in North Denver. And because they sent me out, we have an annual water analysis that they send out. And they sent one out last year that says, hey, just for your safety, we want you to know that these PFAs are a thing. And, we found 7 times the detectable limit in your water, in your drinking water. So, good luck. And we care about you.
And don't drink the city water. Go buy bottled water, right? Now everybody's drinking plastic bottled waters. And then the research just came out that there's plastic particles 100 times what they suggested was in it when they approved the plastic bottles. 100 times. How do you make a mistake? Like, how does that even come up? I went to the store the other day, $4 for a bottle of water. I'm thinking, what do you do, right? Now I'm sitting in Arizona. There is no water. You can't buy water here that's not contaminated. It's inflated in cost. You definitely aren't going, barely want to wash your clothes with this stuff, let alone watch my dogs eat it.
Oh yeah.
Crazy.
If you can pour your spray on plants and have it taken into the plants, when you take a shower, guess what?
Oh,
You're
yeah,
doused
exactly.
in it.
Point taken.
And so it's in your skin's the largest organ on your body. It absorbs chlorine in 3 seconds. So you can imagine like what these substances are doing inside your body and wreaking havoc. And so I think the biggest issue I think with the PFAs is that we're just now learning about it.
Yeah,
and this has been used since the 40s.
It's a good thing that we're learning about it, though. We're diving deep into it. And another interesting fact that's going to bring us into the next subject, heavy metals, is I was doing some research on corn production with PFAs. So the systemically uptake of the plant, we call them an extract, right? An extractor. The corn stalk was loaded with the PFAs, but the corn kernels weren't. So that questioned me, like, and you and I have been really diving deep in heavy metals and the cause, right, of a lot of things. And what we knew a year ago is completely different than what we know now. And through the data that we've been collecting on all the farms I'm consulting for, it's really interesting. But just that thing, if you bring it over to the cannabis side now, versus the corn and not having it in the kernels. That was really interesting how a plant can systemically uptake that, but not end up in the end result of the flower, right? Which was very, very interesting. So let's go into a little bit of heavy metals. I'm just going to stop. I'm going to start on some of the research that we've been kind of working on. And first off, I don't even know where this is going to go long. I know we got, testing limits between agriculture and cannabis are totally completely different. So I'm watching these failures of cannabis farms across the country of heavy metals, and it's the four horsemen. It's mercury, lead, cadmium, and of course arsenic. And the levels of these in cannabis and agriculture are totally different. In agriculture, the limits are they don't really want to talk a lot about that, right? Because it's a contaminant like the PFAS they can never get rid of. They don't want to lower it, but it's almost too low in cannabis. And the difference between the two is like for instance, I think it's 0.2 parts per million in flower in cannabis, right? And that's the detection limit. And in agriculture on arsenic, it's what, 0.5 or 5.0 or something like that. I'd have to look it up, but it's so much greater on that. So you want to highlight and talk a little bit about heavy metals?
Absolutely. It's been one of these things that's really we didn't think about until it became something we have to think about. I mean, I know farms in Colorado that my family used to work at, and because they popped for heavy metals when they just decided, they passed legalization, and 6 years later, like, oh yeah, now you guys have heavy metal standards, and if you guys violate your heavy metal standards, we pull your product off the shelves, we fine you, and then we will essentially, you got to pay that back, and if you don't pay that back, we'll take your company from you. We'll take your license. So it's become an issue in cannabis that it's been a beast that we didn't realize we were going to have to fight, and so through doing this, and like I said, my background's in industrial agriculture, like conventional agriculture. So I look at this kind of like how we look at bell peppers and how we look at all the other produce, because produce, like you said, does have heavy metal testing as well. But, I think the biggest difference that we're finding is that not all plants eat the same. Not all plants drink the same.
Right.
Not all plants move molecules around the same. Some plants store all the molecules in the roots. Some send it up to the fruit. Some deposit in the leaves. And there's different ratios of where these plants will put these molecules. But the main thing we've noticed is that the cannabis is a bioaccumulator. Whether it's hemp or whether it's high THC cannabis, it doesn't matter. The plant is an accumulator. We plant hemp in radioactive fields to suck up the radiation so it can be produced or remediated into a form that's not as dangerous for the environment and dangerous for human health. Like, that's how powerful the hemp plant is. And so when you put the same standards as you do bell peppers on hemp, or even close to the same standards, it's not the same. And so, the plant is going to suck up more metals than a bell pepper, than a tulip, than a daisy. And then when you cross apply the two standards, and they just don't add up. Yeah. And so, it's also not as straightforward, I think, as a lot of people think in our industry, in the cannabis industry. It's not that if you have heavy metals in your soil, you're going to get heavy metals in your flower. This is a way more complex topic than that, and something you and I have really dug into and found is like some soil can be hot in arsenic or lead, and that won't show up in the flower. And it's like, what is that? And I draw parallels to when I was working on pecan farms. There's a disease called a deficiency called mouse ear deficiency, and it happens when you have a deficiency of nickel. But what we actually find is that a deficiency of nickel is actually a toxicity of aluminum. And mouse ear is caused from too much aluminum, because if the plant doesn't have nickel in the root zone, the plant is going to take up the aluminum to replace it. Because it's all about energetic balances within the soil, and each of these elements have a certain energetic profiles. I'm a chemist, right? And I'm talking about energetic profiles, but every molecule, every element has an energetic profile to it. And if the plant is deficient in something that it needs, it will find a similar energetic profile from something, and usually that something is heavy metals. So I think what we've been finding is that these farms that are deficient or don't have enough organic matter, or don't have enough microbiology activity inside the root zone, is what's causing these heavy metals to be sucked up into the plant and really causing some issues. So I think it's more than like just it being there. Like we've found, it's an expansive topic.
Yeah, this is what Tim and I and Alan, we have our meetings, and we really go into a lot of this idea. And it's really awesome because it's like a discovery phase of agriculture. But what I always like to, I'm a layman and I like to picture things, right, and give a snapshot visual. And for me, I see the same thing. I see mineral content. When the minerals are off, now we're seeing bioaccumulators come back up. We're seeing hits on that. We're seeing if you don't have really good living soil, just because it's living soil, it could be completely out of whack. It has to be a balanced structure of a real healthy living soil. And when your soil is really healthy and living, your plant is calling down and saying, I need this. Bam, it's available. What happens is when the plant is going down in the the biology, the fungal or whatever's out of whack in there, it's having a hard time. It's just like us. When the plant goes down and it's looking for something, it's hungry right now, right? So I picture that self as myself driving down the street, and I'm really hungry, and I can either go to fast food or I can go to home and I can cook a nice healthy supper. And sometimes I just need to eat, right? We're fast, we're moving. I just need to eat, so I'll go and I'll start eating something else that's not so healthy for me. The plant is kind of is parallel to us in that frame is where the plant when it needs to be fed, it's going to get whatever it is. So if it doesn't have the source it's looking for, it's going to go to the secondary mobilism on it, and it's going to pick something up. It's going to McDonald's, right? It's going to a fast food. It's going to grab whatever it is. If that's accumulating more heavy metals, then that's what it is. But also, I really want to be affirmative on all your products have to be sourced correctly. You can't start with garbage in and expect not to have garbage out. Soil builders and a compost out there is across the country is super dirty, right? These guys are testing. They understand. We're seeing labs say non-detect, right, on limits of heavy metal and things. And then when we go and we go to our laboratories and it's calibrated lower than that, it's detected. It's about the equipment. So there's so many different layers that cause failures down the line. We really need to really open that up and sourcing, even not with just soils, but all fertilizers, all products out there. Manufacturers, you guys have to do a better job because you have farmers that are putting their life and everything on the line, everything they got to produce a healthy, regenerative life type of whatever they're growing. And your guys' products are part of the problem. Right. So you really need to, sourcing's everything. If you can't source it, get out of the game.
Right. No, it's so important. I mean, this is people's livelihood. And, this is why farmers get super irritated whenever people come onto their farm and sell them snake oil or sell them something that they no longer can sell their crop for. Like they have an organic farm and they put a product down that they thought was approved, and the salesman told them it was approved and it wasn't approved, and then they pull their license from them. I mean, that's over 3 years of work. I mean, that can destroy a farm. So us manufacturers have an obligation and a responsibility to our users, to the farmers, to the people who grow food, to the people who grow the crops that people consume, to source responsibly and to make products that are responsibly that have a responsible nutrient profile to it and isn't heavy in contaminants or antibiotics or heavy metals.
And when I'm watching in the cannabis side of the industry, when I'm watching really great living soil mindset farmers all of a sudden failing for heavy metals and turning to synthetic cultivation because it's too hard and they lost too much money, that's the problem of the man. I mean, there's so much to discuss on there. There's so much to talk about. And without me really getting hard on it right now, I'm trying to think of a different way of doing it. But we as soil manufacturers and input producers, we got to do better, man. We have to do better. We can do better. And those that won't do better, get out of the game, man. Just get out of the way. Period.
Well, I think that's a real good segue into kind of what we're doing and what I think a lot of manufacturers can do. We're on the precipice of being able to have advanced organic manufacturing of our materials, of our products in agriculture. Before it was just like I said before, is this delineation is either old school organics where you're spreading manure around, or you're using these synthetic chemicals with this biotechnology, genetically modified GMO biotechnology. And there is a new forefront these days. Technology has finally caught up to the point where we can take these old organic materials that was super laborsome, the manures, grinding up kelp, drying kelp and grinding it up and then spreading it out in your fields. Now we have the ability to take our technology and isolate the nitrogen out of the soybeans. So we can have a 16% nitrogen product that goes on the market where farmers can have a organic nitrogen source that isn't 2 or 3 or 5% like it has been. We're able to triple the nitrogen content of these organic materials. I mean, the person that we're working with right now, he has the first organic phosphoric acid on the market. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but we've had bone meal, ground up bones, or we had rock phosphate as a phosphorus source for organic growers.
Yep.
And that was all. But now we have the ability, the most you get out of it is 3%, 9% tops. Now we're able to make 20, 30% phosphorus products organically. The potassium sources, we can take fruit rind ash and take all the potassium, isolate the potassium out of fruit rinds and make a potassium product that's no salt, no chemicals, but it's pure potassium. It's like 30% potassium. So there's advancements being made for organic farmers. The issue though is getting these materials onto the list. The issue is putting the money into the research and development for us organic manufacturers to develop the next generation of agricultural products so we can keep up the yields, 1.5, 2 tons of soybeans per acre, or, a ton or 2 an acre for corn. We need to keep up our yields, but we need to use advanced organic technology so we're not spraying poisons around. And we're using our advanced organic technologies. And, part of where I come from is working with a South Korean bioscience laboratory using weird Chinese tree extracts that kill bugs in one spray. It's those types of ingenuities and endeavors and innovations that we need to really put on the forefront. And, it's the things that we're working on, Pat, that we're fundraising for. We're trying to build and develop and start up the new next generation of these advanced organic materials.
You said soybean. Let's talk about sourcing soybeans. Go.
Oh, man. Well, we grow 87 million acres of soybeans in the United States, and 170,000 acres is organic. It's 0.2% of all the soybeans we grow in the United States are organic.
0.2%. 0.2%. What about GMO?
That's 99.99999% GMO.
Okay, that's
we have non-GMO
States.
beans that we can grow. But that's the way it is because, like I said, weeds are an issue. So we want Roundup Ready soybean technology so we can spray Roundup, glyphosate all over and kill the weeds, but grow the crop. And so all of our crop, and then we have harvest aids like Paraquat, and then we have other herbicides we use like 2,4-D and Flexstar and all these other different compounds that we have to, because the weeds become resistant, we grow super weeds, we have to rotate through seven different herbicides on soybeans. I'm in the process of cultivating 35,000. I mean, me not personally, but the farm we're working with is cultivating 35,000 acres of soybeans. We've been working with LSU, Louisiana State University, and they sent me over the conventional program. And, it's 17 different products they use to grow the soybeans, and 2 of them are fertilizers. 15 of them are pesticides, and that should give you a scope of how our soybean and how the corn and how the crops in the United States are grown.
And this is why we're not sourcing in the United States our soy for our products.
No, and this is where I'm on a adventure to see how much organic soy I can grow in the United States. Yeah. So it's been like pulling teeth, but we have to mostly, if we want non-GMO soy, we have to mostly source it from Latin America, or we have to source it from Asia. India has just kicked up production of organic soybeans, so they're about to hit the market and reduce the price of a ton of soybeans by about 40%. So awesome. India's just started up and producing organic soybeans. Great. But the United States is 99.9% GMO soybeans, just like corn. We grow some sweet corn. It's not organic, it's conventional, but we grow a little bit of organic corn. But again, farmers can't take the loss because they're restricted on what they can use. If the USDA NOP, National Organic Program, expanded the list of usable products, you'd find more farmers growing organic. But because of that, because the government restricts what we can put down and what we can grow crops with for the organic certification, you see farmers few and far between growing organically. And that's the problem. We need to get more products on the market that are advanced, that can fit through irrigation systems, that can, be efficient on a farm, not break the bank, but also allows the farmers to get the yields they need to get to make it a profitable endeavor to keep their farm alive.
And that data has been collected now, so that's not a myth anymore, right? Yields, right? 10 cents, 20 cents on the dollar. All of that data has been collected with the regenerative type of agriculture out there, even in food. I mean, food and in plants. I mean, and in animals, same thing, right? It's really interesting.
It is. And we're starting to find that more people are wanting a different solution. I mean, the conventional soybean guys are lucky to break even this year. After all the soybean farmers from 30,000 acres to 160,000 acres, 300,000 acre farms, most of them conventional soybeans are going to lose money this year on their farms, which is really sad and should be very concerning for people, because if farmers start losing their farm, and it's kind of getting back to what you said before about the government purchasing your farms.
Yeah, exactly.
If the farmers can't keep their doors open, the government's going to come in and buy their farms, and it's going to be one mega corporation farming all of our food. And this is a problem because power isn't decentralized food production. And we should really try to help these farmers out and be concerned about where our food's coming from, because if not, the government's going to grow our food and they're going to make us eat crickets and lab-grown meat. It's
crazy. I mean, if you open your eyes and you really see it, I mean, just look at just the beef industry alone, right? So we had United States stamped beef, American beef. There's 30% of it on the market right now. There's 70% being imported and stamped, grown in the United States right now. So that doesn't sound, I mean, you're thinking, oh, that's horrible, but really look at the bigger picture of that. Okay, now you got the bird flu coming in. You got all these diseases that are starting to happen on cattle and grazing and cow across the country. So what does that say, right? Now they need vaccines for this, for the cattle, and this. They're all of a sudden, wouldn't it be more financially available for government to import 90% and call it American beef? Like now all of a sudden they're buyback farm programs. Like there's something huge going on here that we're just not. I mean, I see it, right? And follow the money is really what it comes down to, and trust God over government. Period.
I want to know why there's been 2,000 food processing plants that have exploded, lit on fire, or had a plane fly into them. And I think all these are very important questions for us to ask. Like, why does China own a third of our meat processing and food processing in the United States? These are some serious questions I have to interact with all the time. And I think we should be more aware of it, which is why we need to talk about it and why we need to get the word out, because, the goal, and they've already been doing it over in Europe, is to use crickets and use mealworms and use black soldier fly larvae and grind them up into protein and lace them into our flour so we're eating bugs. Bugs are not plants. Our body has the ability to break down plants. Our body does not have the ability to break down chitin, which is what the bug is made out of. We don't have the enzyme. We can break cellulose down because we have cellulase. We can't break chitin down because we don't have chitinase. And they're trying to, the royal they, if you will, the EU Parliament's already trying to get the European citizens to eat cricket protein in their flour. Italy's already like, you're not touching my flour, like Italians do. But, this is coming to a nation near you, because the most efficient way to grow protein is bugs. And if you have a bunch of people and all the farms are already starting to light on fire and all the cattle are dying and all the chickens are dying, what are the options? And I think this is a really important question you need to ask yourself, like, what is the only option we have in the future if we can't farm our farms because the farmers are going out of business, you can't grow livestock because they're all dying, and the food processing plants are on fire? That really leads you only to a couple different scenarios, and that's either eating the lab-grown meat that Bill Gates is trying to push around that does cause cancer, or it's cricket protein, which is a protein that our body is not supposed to consume. So, I think we're about to get to a crossroads here, where if we don't pay attention, we're going to get into a situation that we don't want to be in.
Man, God over government, baby. Every day. Like you can't make this up. It's like every time you turn around, you're getting taken at one end or the other, man. It's crazy. Yep. It's insane.
This is our journey. We're warriors. We're fighting this. We have to fight this. We care. We love our country. We love our people. We love our family. We love our friends. We love our earth. There's no reason why we shouldn't be fighting for it, because that is freedom. Food is the ability. Food and money. Being able to grow your own food and generate your own money are the two things that keep you free. And if you can't do either, then we have a very bleak future ahead of us. But I firmly believe in what we're doing, Pat. I know we're doing it for the right reasons. And I know that people are waking up and people are going to be joining us. I have no doubt in my mind.
Well, we could talk all day, but we're not. We're going to come back on here and do another one. I'm having Alan Atkinson's coming on it too. He's our fermentation specialist. Like, we got to give him a cool title. But we know to recap some of what is going on and what we talked about today. You know, we spread a lot of stuff, but there's so much and we could spend hours on this thing. But today I want you guys to go and thank a farmer. Like, buy produce from your farm. Go to your local area and find who's really producing nutrient-dense food. Again, how do you know a farmer is really knows what he's doing, or is he just, I'll tell you how I do it. I'll walk through a farmer's market, or I'll go to a farmer and I'll start having conversations about biological assessments. Right out the gate, I'll start finding out, what does he do? Any biological assessments on his farm? When he starts talking about nutrient-dense food, has he heard of these? If you start talking this language to a farmer who's conscious cultivating, he's going to come to the table and smile and say, yes, finally somebody's asking me. And that's the farmer you want to start getting your produce from. In regenerative agriculture, with meat, with chickens, or with all that stuff. I just have a conversation with farmers. Some farmers are not going to have a conversation. They're not going to be able to be able to answer some questions that I might have, and those might not be the egg producers that I want producing the eggs. But you're going to find the one that's going, oh my God, this guy's asking great questions. Let's go. So, again, thank a farmer, support the farmer, quit supporting the, grocery stores and these certification programs. Like, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of comments down here, but we're going to have more discussion. And if there's somebody hearing this that really has a lot of knowledge on these subjects, man, hit me up. Like, get on a podcast. Educate me. Educate me. I need education. We all need this. Dialogue is super, super important to get out there. And it's going to take all of us in team effort and unity into making change. It's just a fact.
If I can leave off with one note, because when we talk about this behemoth of a problem, we're talking 300 million people. We're talking 50 different states growing food all at the same time. Like, this is a behemoth of an issue, and I think that what can I do is the next question. Is like, yes. Okay, you guys talked about this. What can we do? And I think discourse is the best thing we can do. Start talking about it. Talk to your family about what's in your food. Talk to your family about where you're getting your food. Talk to your family about what's on the back of the package and what's good for us and what's not good for us. And if you have a sick relative or you have a sick family member, talk to them about eating better. Talk about nutrient-dense food. Really discuss our food supply and what you're eating, and don't just blindly put things into your gullet and hope to God it's safe and healthy. Like, let's talk about this, and we all can raise in consciousness and understand that, we need to raise our standard for the food we're eating. And that starts with talking to each other about it and spreading the knowledge.
And understanding that today we live in, 1 out of every 2 people die from cancer. 1 out of every 2 people, right? And I think it was the late 80s, early 90s. It was 1 out of 7 or 1 out of 5. So you look at that growth right now is, what is it going to be? What's coming next? Change has to happen. Education has to happen. The power needs to be given back to the people through education. They have a conscious choice. You pay and you choose with your dollar. That's how we do this, right? And when you know, you know. I don't want to feed once you have the knowledge of harming your child or what you're feeding them versus not harming your child. And people will say it's too expensive, right, to go to the grocery store or the organic section. It is. Grow it in your backyard. Get a hold of us. We teach it, right? You want to grow clean food? Get a hold of Tim. Get a hold of me. We teach this. It's easy. It's super easy. Anyways, Tim, blessings, brother. It's great to have you. We didn't talk a whole lot about what we're doing on the business side, but get ready. All the products that Tim was kind of just hinting and throwing out there, like we're not seeing heavy metals in any of our products now. All of a sudden, right? And the new product line's coming out, and it's pretty awesome. So
I will say, Pat, your soil is one of the only consistent soils I have seen to pass heavy metal testing.
And my licensed farmers all across the country, right? The ones we consult with and the ones we support that purchase it, right? It's why? because I source it. I pre-test everything. I know what I'm building. If I've got, no matter what it is, a resource that's going into me building a soil mix, I individually know exactly. You know how hard it is to actually find clean products that is Soil King approved that goes in the mix? Pretty much almost impossible, right? I've been trying to come out with, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyways, for everybody out there, man, thanks for tuning in to Built for This podcast, you know, where we hope to make a difference and an impact. And this is all about dialogue. So hit the comments, like tell us what you're thinking, right? We want to get the communication out there. I want to learn more. Teach me, I teach you. It's a reciprocalness that what we're doing. And in order for us to change the world and really go after the forefront of what is being pushed down as agenda and in our food society, we have to come and be warriors as a team collectively in unity and fight back. And how do we do that? We do it with our purchase at the dollar, and we do it through clean dialogue. You know, in the comments, keep it clean. Like, just because you don't agree with something doesn't mean you can't educate me. I'm gonna go, wow, you know, like, let's do this together as a team. So gratitude, lots of gratitude. Yeah. God over government. Absolutely. Thank you. Come on in on the next one. Hit the subscribe. Hit the share. Let's go. Knowledge. Get it out there. Boom.